Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I am super excited you could be here because today we are talking about how to live the retirement of your dreams and to do it the right way with passive income. Look, I don't know about you, but the statistics do not look good that most of us are not prepared properly for retirement. And really, passive income is the key to making the kind of money and maintaining the kind of lifestyle that we want to maintain. But how do we do it? Well, that's exactly what we're going to decode today. And with us for the discussion is David Vernich. Now, David Vernich is a commercial lender with more than 3 decades of experience in the banking industry. In 2007, he partnered with other investors to purchase real estate and began his journey to create passive income. Now, David owns more than 100 homes in Tennessee and is passionate about helping others reap the benefits of passive income in their lives as well. David, thanks for coming. Welcome to the show today.
Well, Ty, thanks for having me. It's going to be a fun day to discuss this and kind of unpack it for everyone.
I think it is. And I think one of the funnest things that I learned about you already just in our talk before we get started was you never even liked real estate. Like in the beginning, you're like, no, bad real estate people. And then like you've now found a way to turn that into a form of passive income. So give me your journey. How did you go from maybe not being the biggest fan of real estate to where you are now?
Well, it all starts with my wife. She thought she married somebody that can do basic handyman skills, and boy, was she wrong. And I can say that my father didn't teach me, and I did the same thing with my 4 sons. I didn't teach them either. It's like, you're on your own. I've got nothing in that department. But the reality is, I did try. Passive income is something I always felt for job security reasons. You shouldn't have all your income come from one source. So my father lost one of his jobs when I was 9 or 10 years old. And I saw the impact it had on the family. We made it okay through it. But even as a 10-year-old, I felt the stress of, not having that paycheck come in for him and cutting expenses to the bone and not really trusting a corporation necessarily to be your employer for life, because very few people see anyone getting the gold watch and the happy retirement party at 65 anymore. That's a very rare occurrence in corporate America. So essentially what I did was I woke up at age 45, about 15 years ago, and said, using the metaphor I use in a book I just wrote, everybody's got essentially 40 years, from age 25 to 65 to get ready for that retirement portion of life where you're not working. So if you look at a football game with 4 quarters, this was my halftime adjustment. I was 20 years into my career, kind of looking at my financial statement for my 401k, which I've been diligently putting money aside that whole time. And when I did the math, it was way short, like most Americans. It was going to be way short. So I had to do something different. Now, what I tell people is I didn't change what I was doing with that. I was maxing out what I could afford to max out in my 401k. What I needed to do was do a side gig, like most entrepreneurs and people that have W-2 jobs that are trying to nurture that part. But my whole focus was on passive income. And so I tried virtually everything. I started a business from scratch. I bought a business. I did an Amazon business. I even tried a multi-level marketing business. And the bottom line is none of them worked for me, not one. Now, if they work for you, I say, great, keep doing what works, because it's really hard to find the one thing that works. And real estate was one thing that I avoided because of what I said prior. I am not a handyman. I don't like fixing things up. I don't like talking to people that know how to fix things up. I don't like property management. And I really don't like looking for properties to buy either. So when you add all those up into one big bundle, it was like, why would I do this? And the answer is, it was the only thing left for me to try.
That's interesting.
And it worked.
So what got you into trying? Like, how did you make the first segue to even dive in?
There was 2 things. I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I think a lot of people have read that book, and then went deeper into cash flow quadrant and to other things. And then there were a couple of mindset issues that I had to get knocked down. One of which was the definition of good debt versus bad debt. I didn't understand that, and I was a banker. I just thought debt was debt, and most of it was probably bad. You shouldn't get into debt, even though that was my job to get people credit for their businesses. I could see the dark side as well when people borrowed too much and their business didn't generate enough cash flow, and saw how that affected them. So I was very conservative and had that drilled into me that you don't over leverage somebody because you're just putting them in danger. That plus the fact that I felt like I had to do it all myself. I thought I had to be the guy that went out there and did all this stuff. And at the time, and still do, I had 4 sons to put through college, and my wife wasn't working at the time. So with all that being said, I'm like, I don't have the time. I don't have the expertise. Oh yeah. And here's one more thing. I don't have the money. That's usually the thing that keeps people from doing real estate is they don't have the money. So after I kind of knocked all those dominoes down one by one, this was 2007, and I saw, okay, the market is in for a major real estate crash. So we're going to have a sale of the century. And that motivated me. If I don't jump in now, I never will. So basically what I did was I kind of went through my old Rolodex of clients that were real estate investors that I had known for years. And I took them to lunch and I said, hey, will you teach me how to do this? Knowing all the things I said previously, I still didn't want to do any of them. I just was trying to figure out how I could do this, or was there a way I can do this? And one of them took me up on my offer and said they would teach me, be my mentor. And they thought I was going to do one house, flip it, and then go off and do it myself. And I thought, well, I'll do exactly what they say because they're my teachers. But all I'm looking for is one thing. And that is, what value do I bring to this process? Is there anything that I'm good at and that I enjoy doing that I can participate in real estate ownership? And when I finally figured it out, it was the one and only thing that I was good at was finding the money, because I had to solve that problem for myself. I went to a bank and I got a $100,000 unsecured loan from a banker that I'd known for 20 years. So it's one of those things where that was easy. That part was easy. But guess what? Everything else was hard for me. So it was essentially the who, not how formula. You don't have to be the guy that does everything from A to Z.
So more on that, there's so many things that I want to unpack there. First of all, you mentioned debt, and then I also thought it was interesting because I think in one of your book, I think it was your book, where you have kind of the not common view that real estate, that homes aren't assets. Can you dive more into that? I mean, maybe I'm misconstruing that, but I think you kind of referred to it as maybe even controversial opinion that the house isn't an asset. And why is it an asset? And can it be? What has to happen for it to become one?
Yeah, basically the definition of an asset is one that I pulled from Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's not my original idea, but essentially as an asset that puts money in your pocket. So really for your house to be an asset, you have to move out and rent it. Then it becomes an asset. So a lot of Americans, and I see this all the time, they'll buy their own residence and live in it. And of course they account the equity that they build up in their house as an asset. But the way the cash is actually flowing, you're paying off a mortgage, you're paying taxes and insurance. There's not any money flowing into your pocket from that asset until you rent it out. So that's the way you can't, or in the parlance of Bigger Pockets and other real estate podcasts, you can house hack, where you live in one bedroom and rent out the other ones. Then your house could be an asset. But it all comes down to passive income. How do you convert this into an asset that's generating income for you so you can spend it today?
Let's dive into the elephant in the room, which you addressed. It's money, right? And I think so many people look into, read, hear about so many different ways of investing into real estate, but it all comes down to your ability to get money. Like, I mean, you can't live, I wouldn't think, successfully off the rent of one property you own, maybe free and clear. I imagine like you've got to acquire more properties. But how do you do that? Because in my experience, you're a lender. I used to be a mortgage broker. Once you get 1, 2, 3 properties, you're going to need to put 20, 30, 40% down potentially on those future purchases. It's a big chunk of cash. So what do you say to people that have that objection and have run into a brick wall with trying to get the money they need to break into real estate?
Well, it was the first puzzle I had to unravel for myself, because as I said earlier in the podcast, I didn't have, at the time, and it's 2007, the pot of money I needed to have to buy a house, fix it up, and then get it to cash flow where it would pay for itself was about $100,000. And I didn't have $100,000, but I did know how to get $100,000. And so that was the first skill set that I brought to the table as a banker, is presenting to another banker why this would be a good loan for him to do. And so that would be my first thing. The second thing is, even though I did that for myself, the reality is that's only going to take you so far. As one individual, you have your income, you have your credit score, and as you alluded to, as a mortgage guy, at some point somebody's going to say, you've got enough. You're up to your eyeballs in loans. You don't need any more. And that might be one for some people, that might be two for some people, houses. And it's rare that you have somebody that can qualify for 10 loans in their own name. So what I decided to do was carve it into pieces and say, look, I'm only going to be good for so much. The mentors that I partner with are only going to be good for so much. But if we bring in a third partner who's always going to be a clean slate, so to speak, for the banker, that as long as he's got one person that doesn't have any houses, we can partner. And as a partnership, the three of us combined with our financial statements, 3 W-2 jobs, 3 credit reports, now you've got a system where you can insert one person in as a partner and have unlimited capital if you buy these things correctly and fix them up and they cash flow. Makes sense?
It makes perfect sense to me. And honestly, I think we're at 600 plus episodes. I've never heard anybody suggest what you're suggesting. And coming from lending like you do, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. So what you're saying then, let's say hypothetically, is that we've got 2 people, you and your mentors, right? Your partners. You guys have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have the connections, you know the process, you know what to buy, you know how to fix it up, you know how to make money, you know all that stuff that I don't know. Right. And a lot of books I got to read, even scratch the surface of what you know. Right. And then you say you bring somebody else in. Me, I'm the third party. And you bring me in for maybe, I think, one transaction where I get the mortgage, my part of that role is, like you said, I'm the money guy. I can get a mortgage for one investment property, maybe. So we're going to use me to get the money for that one investment property while you two, part of the partnership, is helping do all the rest. Is that accurate?
It's fairly accurate, but the way I do it is this way. They are going to be a partner in the deal, equity partner, and they'll be on the loan, but we don't get your conventional, Fannie Freddie type loans where it's just a loan in their name. It's basically a partnership that owns the property. The three of us in this case would be partners, or our LLCs, if we had individual LLCs, would be the partners in the partnership. And then I've got the bank contacts that know what I do. Okay. And so essentially I'm bringing in a new person, and their job really, as the new guy, as the new investor to insert in this process, is to either have the cash, the credit, the combination of that, or self-directed IRAs, any type of capital stack that they can bring to the table to buy one house, because we buy these things with cash and we fix them up with cash. And when they are cash flowing is when we go to the bank and get an appraisal. And then my job is to get that investor all, or as much of their money out as possible. Typically it's 80% of what they put in, they can get out. 20% is left in, and that 20% is split between the partners so that they can have their portion returned from the other partners, and we're all on the loan, and we go repeat the process. And that's how you have more than 1, 2, or 3 houses. You have multiple houses because it's going to take, in my opinion, the way we do it, a minimum of 10 houses for you to say, hey, this is actually working. Let's keep this ball rolling.
So if we do this, we go in, the 3 of us as partnerships, LLCs or individual, then all 3 of us are on the loan. So, right. And then I'm coming up for the 20% down we may need, approximately, right? So I'm the third partner. My job is to come up with that remainder from a self-directed IRA, from cash, from, what credit, however I can get it. And then the 3 of us get the loan for the 80%. And that's my role, while your guys' role is to help with the other stuff that's involved with finding the right property, renting it, fixing it up, et cetera.
Yes, making it totally passive for the person who can just stay doing their W-2 job, working and not having to swing hammers or look for stuff or get dirty, and essentially plug them into a system that has been proven to work the last 15 years.
So does the mortgage show up on my personal credit report?
Only if you are signing personally. I mean, we'll sign personal guarantees for the LLC and the partnership.
Sure.
It will not show up on your credit because the borrower will be the partnership. So it'll be a commercial loan.
Okay, so then that doesn't that limit my ability to use my own personal credit to buy a primary home for myself, etc. Right,
Exactly.
so I'm still in good shape there because I don't have all this debt showing on my personal credit report. So if I want to do this with multiple homes, can I do it with multiple homes? Can I do it with 10 homes? Am I able with your system to get 10 homes financed if I'm putting up the well, that's my first question. The second question will be down.
Okay.
But can I get 10 properties doing the system just using my own personal credit with you guys to do it?
Yes, you can if you have the, to me, it comes down to one thing. It's like the financial capacity of the person. So if you have no money and you've got bad credit, you don't have a job, no, you cannot do this. Okay.
Sure,
So,
right.
but because everyone talks about, well, this sounds too good to be true. Well, it's not. It's very simple math. It's essentially, are you bankable? Do you have some cash? Do you have, I mean, like I said, I had a little bit of cash, but I had a clean credit and a good W-2, and I knew how to get banks to approve my loans. And so essentially that was what my strength was, my superpower. Um, if I were to get somebody to insert them in this process, and the first person I did this with was my next door neighbor who was a doctor. And I told him, I said, look, you need to do this too. And he's like, Dave, I know your ability to, you're an honest guy and you're hardworking, but you stink as a craftsman. I mean, you send your kids to my house to fix their bikes. You can't do anything. And I said, you're right, I can't. But what I can do is I can find money, and I can find, you're like going to be my guinea pig. And I told him that. And he said, I'll tell you what, if you make money on this first house, then let me know. And I did. So he's like, okay, I'm interested. And I was like, here's exactly what you do. You're a doctor, you go to your bank, not the same one I used. Go to this bank and just tell them I want a $100,000 unsecured credit line. And when we'll use that credit line to buy a house, we'll use that money to fix up the house. And once it's fixed up and we get a tenant in there, I'll go to a different bank that I know. We'll get an 80% loan on the house. And in this case, this was 2008, and 80% of the new appraisal was giving him 100% of his money back. Okay. And then he just repeated the process. So now he's probably got about 18 properties with me and hasn't put a dime of his own money because the partnership has paid the interest. All he's had to do is sign a note.
So you and I both know the difficulty of getting $100,000 unsecured credit line from a bank. That's not something with no collateral, that's truly unsecured, that's not a credit card, is not the easiest thing to typically get. So how do you get around that? What kind of borrower do you have to be able to do that? Because doctors notoriously have horrible credit. So I'm sure
Yeah,
this guy didn't have horrible credit.
he didn't.
But the question becomes like, how do you get $100,000 credit line? Because that's not a common thing. Like, even as I keep a lot of money at my bank and I keep a lot in the business accounts, like a lot. But I don't know if I could walk in and just get 100 grand completely unsecured.
Well, there's two things. One is I was able to do it primarily because of my relationship with the banker. Okay. Because he knew who I was, he knew what I was doing with the money. And the reality was, at the back end, he was secured because once we got the tenant in there, he was the guy I got the mortgage loan from. So he had the ability to do $100,000 without going to loan committee. It was just his credit approval limit. So it doesn't have to be 100% leverage from a line of credit, but I do have a $50,000 unsecured line of credit from another bank that was pretty easy to get. And once we've established ourselves and shown what we've done with our track record in these 15 years, we've refinanced and paid off some properties, consolidated them, freeing up other properties to be used as collateral for lines of credit. So, and then this year, as a matter of fact, and this is not usual, but I will say 4 or 5 banks sent me 0%, cash advances, I guess, from credit cards that equaled enough to do a house. And so I did a house on a credit card at 0% this year.
That's crazy.
So it's available. It's just, not everybody's gonna be able to walk in. I agree. But I would also I would stay away from the big banks, the national banks, and go to the credit unions because they have a lot more leeway. If you're at a community bank or a credit union, they'll have a whole lot more leeway than if you walked in Bank of America, where they will essentially look at you like you just asked them to marry them. What? I don't know who you are.
Yeah, and it's very true what you say. I mean, a lot of our clients use a funding program we call Credit Line Hybrid, and it's similar, but it's using credit cards, not a true credit line.
Right.
where they'll go out and get 50 to 150,000 credit cards. Then they liquidate them and take the cash out at 0%.
Right.
And then they use it to buy property. Then they can put a renter in there, take the cash out, repeat the process. So really, really super legit what you say. Now, with what you guys do you only do it in Tennessee?
Right now, because you kind of just start with your own backyard. So we started in Nashville in 2007, and then Nashville appreciated to the point where you can't buy a rental property and cash flow it for a profit right now. It's very difficult. I mean, not to say it can't be done, but it was like shooting fish in a barrel back in 2008. Now it's like pulling teeth to find something that'll work. So when Nashville started appreciating so dramatically, I had to move out of Nashville into another market. So I moved about 42 miles northwest of the city in Clarksville, Tennessee. And Clarksville has the 101st Airborne Army Post there. So essentially you had a pretty steady stream of people coming in there, and it's grown. It's probably the 5th largest city in Tennessee now. Started in Clarksville, found a new partner that was local to Clarksville and was doing it there. Then when they started getting full of about 35 houses, because they could only run so much themselves, I went to Memphis, Tennessee. And I have 2 operators in Memphis that I work with. And then I just recently branched into Little Rock, Arkansas. So essentially I go where the numbers work.
So in your case, how can you help an average person to be able to jump into this? Like, I guess that's my only question. Like, if I come to you guys, am I buying a course? Am I buying a kit? Am I buying a step-by-step? Or is it actually I'm partnering with you to be the financial side to help get the financing? And then on that end, you're bringing all the knowledge, experience of where to buy it, how to refi it after, all those things.
Yeah, we don't do like a coaching program per se. I did put a book out, and you can get it on Amazon, Middle Class to Millionaire, Making the Leap to the Next Level. So that's something somebody could read. And if they're, really good at essentially saying, okay, this is the process and I'm going to go do this in my own backyard, knock yourself out and do it. But for the target people that I'm trying to reach are the ones that, hey, I see what you're doing. Real estate makes sense. The numbers look good. I just don't want to be that guy that has to go out and find them and do all the work.
I don't have the time to mess with all that.
And so I've got the system to plug you in. I don't charge for that. What they have to do is they have to reach the bar that I need them to be, which is essentially have the ability through cash, credit, or roll over 401k into self-directed or HSA, or even family and friends. I don't care where the money comes from as long as it's legit. I don't want to do drug money, but if they've got the money to do it or the credit, then we can put them in a house and then rinse and repeat until they say that's all I want to do, or they're, you're not committed to doing any more than one. You got to do one to try it. But after you do one, virtually everyone that's done one is going to continue on to do more.
So let's say that how much money usually to get in to start?
It used to be you could do a house for under 100. You can't do that now. We don't do war zones. We don't do, Section 8 really junky places. They have to be your prototypical starter home. So I would say a person should have the ability to take down one house through their cash, their credit, their self-directed IRA, so that we can buy it for cash. And I would say you're looking at between 150 and 200 we're never over 200. We're never seeing much that we would buy under 150 when it's fully complete and renovated.
So let's keep numbers even. Let's say that I come out, I use credit line hybrid, I use self-directed IRAs, all ways that I legitimately teach business owners to be able to get money, right? So let's say, there's so many different ways we could really do this. You could use somebody else's credit to be able to come in as a signer or a guarantor that way, right? You could use somebody else's self-directed IRA, 401k, IRA, stocks, bonds, all those could be leveraged. You could literally leverage stocks and bonds and get 90% financing at 5% credit line and still keep them invested, still earn the interest in the stock market. Like where the person that you're using, it doesn't even, the damage. So I can go on and on and on. It's not hard to come up with 100 to 200 grand. Right. So I come up with 200 grand and I come to you and say, I got my 200 grand. I want in. And then what does that look like if I want to keep investing properties? Because what I would think is that I would go in the first one, we buy the first property for 200 grand, right? We fix it up. We put a renter in there. We refi it. Let's say we get 80% out. Now I'm at 160 left. So I may have enough to buy one more house. But on that second house, my funds have now dropped below the amount. If we're only taking the 80, if the 80% comes out and 20% stays in, then I need to get more cash. So what does that cycle look like?
Yeah, everything you just said was correct, except on the back end, once the person gets their money back from the refi, whatever's left in the house as equity that they have in there, we're going to kick in half of that and pay the investor. So they're only going to have 10%. So essentially, if you want to do 10 houses and you have enough money to do one house, then you should have the money to do 10. And again, it doesn't have to be 10 in 1 year. It could be 10 over 5 years or 6 or 8 or 10.
So if we come in and I do $200,000, I buy a $200,000 house, we take out 80% and I only leave 10% in.
Right.
Right. So then I walk out on the same number with 180,000 in cash out of the property. Now I have ownership interest in a property that's earning me regular money. And then I can take the 180 and invest it again. And then again, only 10% of my money stays in. I get the rest of the money out and I rinse and repeat. So 200 grand legitimately, from your experience, can get me in conservatively how many properties?
It should be able to get you in 10, especially if you're taking the money that you're getting from the cash flow and socking away back into more rental property. So you're having the cash flow from the rental property coming back to you as well. And you're still working your W-2 job. Presumably you're still saving. Presumably you're going to be able to talk to, if you've got the ability to borrow money from one bank, maybe you have the ability to borrow from another bank. So it kind of snowballs. It gives you the motivation to try this because you're seeing actual results coming back to you.
What percentage of ownership do I have of the property and what percentage of the returns?
Okay, so it's the same for both. So it really comes down to 3 different methods. If it's a BRRRR method where you're buying, renting, all that, where the house is a piece of junk that we're buying and fixing it up, it's very labor intensive to do that. So the partner that finds that house, fixes it up, and manages as the property manager is going to get 49%. And then the individual investor is going to get 26%. I'm going to get 25%. That's a BRRRR for a fix up where there's kind of built-in equity when you're done. The next one is turnkey, where you're buying it and the house is already fixed up, sometimes already has a renter in there. That would be, we don't need the third partner because they're a vendor that does all that for us. So it's a 50-50 deal on that. And then the other one is buying a house, fixing it up. Buying a house, fixing it up with a partner, a local partner. It's probably a mom or pop that I've dealt with in the past that would do it for 40%. It's not going to be a heavy rehab. It's just going to be a light cosmetic thing. We tend to do those at 40% for the partner that does the work, 30-30 for myself and the other investor.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. What about maintenance of the property? What about management of the property? What about repairs on the property? How does all that kind of stuff work?
So basically the companies and the people that we do with, like my original mentors, what attracted me to them as a system was they had a full-time property manager that had on staff for their own properties. They had 144 properties. They had a full-time maintenance man. So essentially I want a situation where the people that are local have the ability to find these houses. They know where to stay out of. They have the ability to fix up the houses either through their own staff or through vendors. And then they handle the property management themselves because, number one, we're saving the 10% property management fee. They're not getting that. They're getting their percentage only. And by doing that, their interests are 100% in alignment with mine and the investors.
Good stuff. I have so many questions I could go into. I know a lot of it's covered in your book. So before we wrap up again, what is the name of your book?
It's called Middle Class to Millionaire, Making the Leap to the Next Level.
And it can be on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon. And maybe by the time this comes out, Audible. I had the good fortune of suffering through recording my own book, which I will never do again.
I actually have a funny story. The guy that did mine is blind. He actually is blind, and he actually did the audio of my book because I was never going to take on that. And I got to tell you, I have killed it on Audible. It's well worth the sacrifice, just so you know, on the other end.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to it because that was the most miserable day I've had in a long time when I did that book.
I wasn't even going to read. I said about a podcast though, and and I was like, I never thought about having the book made into Audible. And so I left. I made it as a to-do item, found somebody to do it, and it was well worth the commitment. So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yay!
All right. So middle class to millionaire. I'm going to find a link to the book, put it on the show resources page. Everybody else that wants to learn more, besides buying your book, what action should they take?
I'll do something even better for your listeners. If they want the book for free, they don't have to go buy it. They can just look me up on LinkedIn, where all W2 people should have their profile in there, but I'm in there. I'm the only David Vernich. When you type in David Vernich, especially David Vernich, Nashville, Tennessee. And if you send me a little note and say, I heard you on Ty's podcast, I'd like a copy of your book. I'll send them a PDF copy by email.
Awesome. I love that. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Very generous. And then you also have moneyscoreboard.com. Is that a good place to check it out as well?
Yeah, that's more into the weeds once you read the book. So once people read the book, there's a little inventory and asset sheet to kind of tell you where you are on your journey to replacing your expenses with passive income.
I love it. David, thanks for coming on with us today.
I appreciate it, Ty.
So listen, if you're listening, watching this, I've got 600 episodes. I've never heard anything like this before. It's actually a really, really, really smart strategy. And I can tell that David is smart enough and works with lending and banking, because I did too. And only those of us that have a deep knowledge of how the system works can probably even develop that kind of system. So this is something you may never, ever hear about or see again. It is really that rare, but it is that brilliant, because what it allows you to do is, first of all, come up with one chunk of money, which isn't hard to get. If you listen to the show, I've given you hundreds of ways to come up with that money, and then legitimately invest it in a way into passive income, or to create passive income for yourself, where you just don't have to worry about money again. Look, as entrepreneurs, so many of us want to bank on the selling of our business to retire, but the statistics are not in our favor. Like many of us want that, and it doesn't happen. So it's a really good idea to be like deploying a backup secondary plan as well. As David said, it's good to have your primary source of income or multiple, but you've got to have these passive sources of income that you're building or compounding over time. It's really the key to retirement. And right now you could be doing both. This is a way where you could run your business, and at the same time, you could be building real passive income without spending a lot of effort doing that. I don't know about you, but if you've ever looked into investing in real estate, it's so confusing. There's so many books, there's so many different things you got to think about. We don't have time to do that. With David's system, it literally, a lot of the work could be handled by experts that know that stuff. And you're coming in with the one thing, which is your ability to bring cash into the deal. And as a result of that, truly set up passive income for the rest of your life. So if you want to learn more, grab David's book. I'm going to put a link on the show resources page to buy it. And then I'm also going to put a link to his LinkedIn profile. And again, you can look him up in LinkedIn yourself without even checking out show resources. It's David, right? And then Vernich, Vernich, just like it sounds. So if you find David Vernich in Nashville, Tennessee, connect with them, send them a message. Saul, I heard you on Ty's podcast. Can I get a copy of your book? He's going to get you a copy of the book. And then also make sure that you talk to him a little bit more about next steps if you're interested in jumping in. This is a brilliant way to create passive income for you, your family, for the rest of your life. So make sure that you check out David Vernich on LinkedIn. Make sure you check out the show resources for a paid copy of his book, as well as anything else that helps you get to a point where you're able to invest and earn a lot of passive income with real estate. So thank you very much for your time, for tuning in. Make sure you look up David Vernich on LinkedIn to get started with earning true passive income for you